Welcome everyone to some more RISCV update. Here, previous video is a successful one, AMD RDNA 2 RX 6700 XT of that goodness. So this card was of course not intended for the RISCV unmatched board running here. This is just what we ordered. So what I wanted to summarize for those interested in this RISCV goodness, with all these cards here, which actually ironically like half the cheap ones, actually the cheap ones and the RX 6700 I actually purchased like kind of sort of for this project, but it's of course good to have some testing. So to spare you the frustration if you have this, I have to say something is glitchy there. As much as I hate to say that, pretty much waste a lot of time. I actually thought my experimental kernel hacking caused the instability that I had to do to have the RDNA 2 card running on RISCV. But later I found out with this fine card, Radeon WX 3100, this was the same glitchy, and for that I didn't have to patch the kernel. As well later when I came back to the office, the previous year RX 560 of good old stuff was the same glitchy, so all of those are glitchy. So what happens is this whole system is freezing. It's extremely frustrating and hard to debug now. You would basically probably need some JTAG debugger. Basically the whole kernel freezes. I don't even quite know what's going on there. Probably we would need did I move the camera now with it? Probably. We need probably some JTAG interface there. Maybe theoretically, worst case, you might need a high-end logic analyzer to capture the PCIe bus, because the whole system is freezing. And so not always, usually pretty early, so usually on boot, but sometimes not. But if it doesn't freeze on boot, then usually faster than later. So yeah, my conclusion, most likely something PCIe glitchy, or need some more investigation, but neither. From all the companies I contacted, SiFive didn't got back to me, and AMD only got very little back to me without any positive, hey, we would like to sponsor this some hours. So of all the stack of cards, well, they work in theory, but hang usually fast sooner than later. Of all those cards, only the card, ironically the one I first purchased here for this testing, the HD 5800 whatever, has some strange two names. Also, ironically, the product name is not printed here. I think R5 260 or so. Yeah, Ogre 11. Yeah, cheap stuff. They don't even prep so. Probably I need to make my own sticker here with the company name. Anyway, with the model name. Anyway, so only this initial, yeah, I could have spared me 900 euro worth of hardware, which now we have in stock for testing. But the first card I purchased didn't have a hardware video encoder that I actually wanted to try out for OBS. Anyway, also this is also USB is a little bit glitchy. If I have high bandwidth, like for video capture, then often quickly, sooner than later, USB also bugs out and entirely, the Linux kernel then entirely takes the controller down, so that you lose keyboard and mouse if your USB 3 capture dongle glitches out. Anyway, one tiny little additional update. Back in the office here, of course, we have some, well, not that much. Well, now we have more. Now we soon become René's Tech Tips channel here with all the testing goodness. Otherwise, you've seen in previous video, we mostly have some vintage and retro stuff, including this Nvidia 6600 LE from the G5. This is a card that originally came with a dual-core upgraded previous video Apple Power PC G5, and this card works. So I have this running right now. So that is that here. You can also see that. So if you have some old Nvidia card that probably works with Novo, So unmatch, we can also yeah, eventually I need to have my hotkeys patched back. So that is that. The only thing, so this is a PowerPC, ironically open firmware BIOS, and similar to my previous video from 1 or 2 years ago where I had this card running on x86, because again this is a PowerPC open firmware BIOS, that if you plug this card in an x86 PC, it also does not just work, because the firmware here in here is open firmware. And so what I do here is I have module parameters. I've extracted the BIOS, actually RISCV of Novo developer was so nice 2 years ago, sent me that, extracted that from some other card. And you need the proper one, a matching one. The first BIOS I found didn't work because it probably didn't have dual DVI connectors in the BIOS tables. So basically, you will see that in a second, etc mod probe. So basically you put in mod probe d, so like some nvconf or something, and override the BIOS. This for each kernel driver that might support this. The syntax is of course different, but for Novo it is config equals nvbios equals, and then your name that needs to then be placed in, because this is relative to lib firmware, because this is loaded, requested from the I actually wanted through the firmware loading interfaces. It needs to be in lib firmware, so I just put here some NV6600LE ROM in there, and then that works, because then the kernel driver here posts the card DRM adapter not initialized running vBIOS init tables, and then as you see, this is a unmatched, of course, here. So yeah, so long story short, I said it before, this is for early adopters. If you do not know that you want to test RISC-V stuff, don't spend the, darn camera scenes. Don't spend the $666 for this, well, Atom or AMD E350 performance level with glitchy, quirky PCIe. Is it 3, I think, Gen 3, and glitchy USB. And so don't get the latest and greatest card, certainly not an RDNA 2 RX 6700 XT, or even an RX 560, or even an WX 3100. To be fair, neither of those cards is in the vendor qualified list, but in my opinion, vendor qualified list, sure. The point is, I find them mostly pointless. I mean, memory here for the Ryzen, it's like, yeah, of course, most memory, 99% of the memory will work. I find this mostly bullshit, although in that case, if it's early-ish silicon with an S-media USB and S-media, it could also be the S-media, there's an S-media AS whatever PCIe switch, could be that this is glitchy, who knows what is glitchy, needs investigation. So of all this stuff, yeah, get some R5 240, what this was, or even Nvidia. Of course, none of these cards has early boot output, because there is no early boot BIOS. Well, there is some firmware, but that doesn't support VGA posting of, because obviously there are no RISC-V graphic cards. So all of them need driver posting, as seen here, running some init tables for initializing the hardware and stuff. So no BIOS, fancy BIOS, graphic BIOS, early firmware support, obviously, and even init.rd and stuff, unless you put your graphic driver, which they are huge, right? AMD GPU. Even I don't have Inti2 with our fully modular kernel setup. We also don't have this big GPU drivers. Again, AMD GPU 10 megabyte. How big is even Novo? That is, so yeah, you don't have even early print K or so, except over serial port. and Novo is even okay, only 2.5 nearly megabyte, at least in memory probably. That also means it's probably similar size on file system. AMD GPU is even larger, here more features and stuff. All right, I should also mention, yeah, so get some cheap crap. Even Nvidia will work, and PC cards, of course, usually don't need this. BIOS quirks is only if you get an even more exotic card like that. I should mention, so with both cards also, the AMD Radeon R5, I got some sporadic, also here this keyboard, too many keywords. I got some sporadic Mesa compiler diagnostic outputs. Where was it? Maybe, of course, you've seen this previously. GLX Gears worked with AMD GPU. Even with RDNA2 with my patch kernel work. When I was using, I think when I was using the mini browser or other stuff here, the WebKit GTK stuff and friends. What is this? A little bit hard moving. I got some Mesa assertion failures with some use cases. I think probably scrolling around here something. So this is right now Nvidia with Novo, and that has another bug that even, oh wait a second, it even starts, oh no, it only starts to show. So this fails early in NVFX word program. It is hard to tell. I would need to plug in a similar card, or actually I have a similar card. I have actually this card. So yeah, you see testing, more testing, whatever we touch, more testing. I would need to verify if this is a RISC-V specific bug. And even then it's probably a compiler bug or other alignment or whatever compiler miscompilation stuff. Because it's a very generic assertion, immediate data type, float 32 fails. So I would need to, or maybe also you don't see this most sharp, maybe potentially. So that would be the, probably share, like, and subscribe. Whatever we do here, somehow we find issues. I would now also need to confirm, maybe this is a generic Mesa regression, because probably not so many people recurrently run vintage retro NV30 there. I have the bigger brother of this. I have the non-LE, the 6600 not as light edition in the G5 with some more memory bandwidth or compute cores or whatever. So I could install the latest kernel, the latest Mesa on the G5. I probably should do it anyway for testing and stuff, and see, does it always occur? Is it a generic bug, or is it RISC-V specific? But yeah, so only constant is testing. The one thing is also this card gets mighty hot, right? If you were wondering why I have a Noctua fan, not sure if you've seen this. So this passively cooled card from the G5 gets freaking hot. So you definitely want some airflow, which is why I had this Noctua fan here. And another pro tip, I modified this because this fan here was not pulse width modulated, and it's a little bit annoying. There's this small fan there, also probably not shorting stuff with these metal brackets. Another pro tip, I maybe leave in the comments below if I should make a dedicated video about that. But so this header, which you don't see, so this header is constant 12 volt, and ironically in their schematics they had this initially pulse width modulated, and they removed this. So in, I don't know, revision 1 or something, in the history of the schematic it's visible in there that they edited this. It's really a shame. I really wish that would also be pulse width modulated. There's only 2 pins. You probably Don't see that's the most. Because we don't have enough light here. Hello, light. Where is it even? Pretty dark there, huh? So the other unused header is pulse width modulated, but there is not a Linux driver. I also patched the Linux kernel for that. And usually I reverted the polarity here. I snapped those pins open because in the infinite wisdom, the polarity of the fixed 12 volt header here is reverse of what would fit on the 3-pin header. So if you want to plug this on the pulse width modulated pins, you need to swap negative and positive here on that and need to patch the Linux kernel, which I've done to, because otherwise this small fan is super annoying. Anyway, just some updates for that. A little bit frustrating. I wish, yeah, also I should note SiFive is not the most cooperative. I not only did they not answer to my request for sponsorship, I also filled out the form to get the errata and hardware documentation, and they neither answered. This is, of course, they're on their website. This is a little bit shameful, in my opinion, and disappointing for companies that make new, more open board, and then are not so very open with errata and documentation. So the last time I checked, so yeah, the hardware reference manual is somehow not published. Wasn't for months. Super frustrating. I would even, of all the sponsorship I'm begging for, because the PCIe stuff and the graphic stuff is super time consuming, can't do everything for free, I would have written the RTC driver, because as I mentioned along the lines, there is not even a, well, most stuff is supported except the, well, not pulse width modulated fan, but also not the RTC with the battery backed battery backing there for the timekeeper. I would even write that, but there is not a specification. I looked through all the stuff I found here. I didn't find anything RTC related, so yes, yeah, so thank you for that. Also, if you want to download even that, oh no, this is download, but this is, I think this didn't have, this is updated. Let's RTC. The last time I checked RTC clock, this didn't have any programming, doesn't look like that. So yeah, this here is errata, is submit. I submitted this months ago, didn't hear anything back. I also wonder, yeah, why do they have this registration if they anyway don't send this out? And I think I emailed them independently regarding this hardware reference manual, and I heard nothing back. And that is not only not good support, but a little bit disappointing, if not shameful, for a new look. We are open, alternative, more open either. Anyway, a little bit frustrating. In summary, not even sure, I said I make a dedicated video, I'm not even sure what I should say in the review video, because if maybe I somehow should for the views and video production, but basically, yeah, atom performance for high price RISC-V early adapters, PCIe and USB is a little bit glitchy and quirky, and in summary, only for low-level developers and early, yeah, hardware firmware developers. And for firmware, some stuff is visible in like the unmatched datasheet or somewhere. No, not the datasheet. It's also a little bit misnamed here. Also not that. So in one file somewhere I found maybe that, or somewhere else, there were some internal documentations of memory ranges and bits and pieces, but again, not everything. For example, RGC and other stuff are probably that. Yeah, so there is some documentation, but not everything. And wherever the end, even the firmware is not fully open source, right? So the firmware is DDR4 training and bring up and stuff is, as far as I know or have seen, binary blob. Do they have here RTC somewhere? Clock generator, clock reset control. Yeah, anyway, just a little bit update, especially, yeah, this tip surrounding Nvidia graphics and otherwise. Don't plug in something too new. You would always think this works open source support wise, but yeah. Anyway, that's it for this update. I hope you learned something, and leave in the comments below what you think, and hope to see you soon for all the next videos and live streams to come.